I thought the hardest battles of my life had already been fought overseas, but nothing prepared me for the moment I limped off a plane, craving the peace of my own front porch, only to find strangers sitting in my living room like they owned the place. My flagpole was gone, my garage filled with someone else's boxes, and the HOA president, a woman who had despised me from the start, was standing on the sidewalk smirking like she'd just won a war without firing a shot. That's how I found out my house had been sold out from under me for $500,000, while I was still patching wounds in Afghanistan. The house wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. A brick 3-bedroom with a porch where I'd pictured sipping coffee every morning once I came home for good. I saved every extra dime before deployments, took on extra shifts, because that house wasn't just a building, it was proof that I could plant roots after years of sleeping on bases and moving from one dusty outpost to another. And the day I moved in, I stuck an American flag into the ground, raised it high, and felt something close to belonging. That's when Karen appeared. Of course, her name wasn't Karen, but that's who she was. Lydia Harper. 50-something, pearl necklace, sharp heels clicking on the sidewalk, the president of the Maple Grove HOA. She looked me over like I was some intruder the day I moved in and said, "We like things tidy here, Mr. Miller. The HOA maintains harmony." Harmony? Yeah, that was her word for control. I paid my dues, kept the lawn trimmed before each deployment, signed the ridiculous violation notices she mailed me for grass half an inch too long. I thought if I just kept my head down, she'd get bored. But Lydia wasn't the kind of woman who got bored. She was the kind who circled like a vulture waiting for weakness. And when I came home injured, discharged from the army with a permanent limp, I walked straight into her trap. I'll never forget the first time I stepped up to my own front door again. I had my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, my crutch under one arm, already picturing the recliner I left behind. Instead, a man in a polo shirt opened the door and said, "Can I help you?" Behind him I could see a woman humming in the kitchen, kids tearing through the upstairs hall. I just froze, stammered, This is my house." He shook his head. "No, buddy, we bought this place last month, from the HOA. And then I saw her, Lydia, standing at the corner with her clipboard and that smug grin. Pearls catching the afternoon light. "Oh, you're back early," she said, fake sweetness dripping from her voice. I demanded to know what she had done. She tilted her head like she pitied me. "You abandoned the property. The board acted to recover costs. These lovely people are the new owners now," I shouted. "I was serving overseas. I was wounded, not neglectful." But she just smiled tighter. "Rules are rules. Maybe next time you'll make arrangements." And I swear, when she leaned closer and whispered, "You should move on, Robert. Start fresh somewhere else." It felt like she'd driven a knife straight into my chest. I stumbled back, dropped my bag in the grass, my neighbors peeking from behind curtains like I was the crazy one. Not the guy who'd just been robbed of everything. That night in a cheap motel, staring at the ceiling, I felt crushed, like I'd lost not just a house, but dignity, identity. The one stable thing I thought was waiting for me. I told myself maybe she was right. Maybe fighting was pointless. She had the paperwork, the board, the community too afraid to speak. I was a limping veteran with no home address, no money for lawyers. I almost gave up right there. Then, at dawn, there was a knock. My father walked in. John Miller, retired SEAL. Mandered, broad shoulders filling the doorway, voice steady as steel. He didn't waste time. He looked at me slumped in that motel chair and asked 6 words. Who do I need to talk to? And in that moment I realized I wasn't fighting alone. Dad treated it like a mission. He spread out the violation letters I'd saved, pieced together a timeline, spotted how fast they moved to call my place abandoned. Too fast. Sloppy. He said, "She planned this, but when people rush, they make mistakes." We dug deeper. Neighbors who had been squeezed for years started coming forward quietly. An old teacher with a shoebox full of receipts. A young couple with a spreadsheet of random fees. Even a widower with shaky hands who showed us the notes Lydia left demanding he repaint his fence 3 times. Dad laid them out like battlefield intel. See the spike in fees? Right before your house sold. Classic diversion. We hired an attorney, a sharp woman named Alicia Chen, who lived for cracking corrupt HOAs wide open. She flipped through the documents, raised an eyebrow, and said, "This stinks. I'll file an injunction today." That's when I felt the tide begin to shift. But Lydia didn't sit quietly. She struck back like cornered prey. Suddenly, blogs run by her nephew were calling me a liar, accusing me of faking my story, fake photos of my yard neglected, emails flooding the police station with complaints. One evening, a cruiser rolled up, an officer asking for my ID. We got a call about trespassing. I handed him my veteran's card and asked, "Let me guess, filed by Lydia Harper?" He muttered something, embarrassed. My father stepped forward, calm but cold. "Officer, my son is fighting this in court. If you let yourself get used as a pawn in a civil dispute, your sergeant won't thank you when this makes headlines." The cop blushed and backed off. That was the first crack in Lydia's armor. Still, I doubted myself. One night, I told Dad, "She's got bylaws, lawyers, money. I've got nothing but a limp and bad dreams." He leaned in, steady as ever, and said, "Every battlefield has rules. You just have to know how to bend them." And for the first time since coming home, I believed him. We built pressure. Alicia filed subpoenas. Neighbors signed affidavits. And little by little, people stopped whispering and started talking. I organized a barbecue at the park, what Dad called a visibility exercise. Half the neighborhood showed up. Families brought food, kids played, and I stood on a picnic table telling the truth about what Lydia had done. I didn't rant. I just laid out the facts. My service, my injury, my home stolen. When I finished, people clapped. Not loud, but real. And for the first time, Lydia's threats sounded hollow. The final showdown came at the HOA meeting. The clubhouse overflowed. Neighbors, 2 reporters with cameras, even an investigator from the DA's office. Lydia banged her gavel, voice sharp. "There will be no discussion of ongoing litigation." My father stood slowly, unfolded a thin folder, and laid out Exhibit A, the abandonment report drafted before the inspection even happened. Exhibit B, the appraisal doctored by her cousin's company. Exhibit C, consulting fees funneled to her brother in Law's shell company. And then I rose, voice shaking but steady. Exhibit D, the minutes for the board vote to sell my home. Except there was no vote. A board member, Derek, stood in the back and shouted, "He's right! We never voted!" The room erupted. Neighbors raised violation letters like banners, shouting about threats, photos taken through windows, fees for imaginary weeds. The DA investigator snapped photos, scribbled notes. Lydia slammed her gavel until it cracked, yelling, "Out of order! This is a witch hunt!" Then Alicia dropped the final bomb, an email from Lydia's own account. "Push this through before he gets back. Deployment, buys us time. Lydia's face drained. She grabbed her purse, muttering, "You'll regret this." But the patrol sergeant stepped forward, calm and firm. "Lydia Harper, please stand. You're under investigation for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement." The click of handcuffs echoed through the room like thunder. Neighbors who had lived in fear for years suddenly spoke at once. "You built nothing," one man said. "We did. You threatened. No more." Lydia thrashed, shouting, "This is my community." But when I looked around, I saw her power evaporating, reporters snapping photos, the treasurer slumping in his chair, board members scattering like leaves. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just breathed. Finally. Like the weight crushing my chest had lifted. Dad put a hand on my shoulder and said, "You held the ground." And I knew he was right. I had fought in deserts halfway around the world. But this battle, on suburban streets, against a tyrant with a gavel, was the one that gave me my life back. As Lydia was led away, neighbors stood taller, voices no longer hushed. The clubhouse lights hummed. The broken gavel lay on the table, and I knew her reign was finished. My house was still tied up in paperwork, but for the first time since stepping off that plane, I believed I'd walk through that front door again. And here's what I learned. Paper tyrants only rule until someone shines a light, and fear only lasts as long as silence.